We sitting down comfortably?
Yes.
I'm sitting down, I'm not comfortable.
Oh. Would you like me to make you more comfortable?
Please.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Why is there a smell on this?
Oh.
Why is there a taste?
Phlegm.
Finish.
Don't you feel sorry for the Flemish?
Okay, no, we're gonna do an intro or not? We're gonna do an intro. What's up, everybody? We are WeMovies. That's Caleb. This is Scotty, and today we take a look at Alfonso Cuaron's newest film on Netflix, Roma.
Roma.
I'm Caleb. This is my voice for those audio listeners.
I am Scotty. This is my voice for those who cannot tell.
And this was Jordan.
And now
This
you
is
can
Jordan.
and now you can tell who we all are. Let's start from the shallow end of the pool. What did
Roma.
everyone think before we even watched it?
No, actually.
Why did you look at me when you said shallow end of the pool?
No, I didn't. I said shallow end of the pool,
Unbelievable.
and then I turned to you.
To be fair, I think he just, in Jordan's head, everyone who isn't him is the shallow end of the pool.
Yeah, you're all shallow. You're all
He's
idiots.
too deep for us.
I am
He's 14
far
and too
superior
Jordan.
to all of you.
All right, well, let's get deep, guys, because this is Roma. This is
We're
very
getting
serious
getting
movie.
deep straight off the bat.
No,
Very
let's.
deep.
I think we should do the synopsis thing. We're gonna.
Oh yes.
All right. Can I try? Because Roma is a very hard movie to try and describe as to what it is. There are a few things you could sort of say about it. Anyway, I wrote some things down. Let me read them out.
Mhm.
It is a slow burn. It's methodical in its disarray. It's very slow. It is.
Said slow twice.
I would say it's almost a hyper-realistic slice of life.
That's
partly autobiographical, steeped in metaphor, whilst not getting too bogged down in symbolism.
Mhm.
It's amazing cinematography. The shots are beautiful, incredible acting, really awesome. I would say it's art, though. It's not entertainment. It's you'd be very entertained if you
I wanna
really
talk-
appreciate everything
I'll come back to that point
to do
later.
with the art. Yeah, it's really hard to describe this movie. And it's
I
really
think
hard
you
to
nailed it.
describe.
I think
without
When you say
getting
that
into-
in
hyper
broad-
real slice of life,
in broad strokes, that's exactly what it is. It's
Yeah.
a hyper real slice of life. Good
I am
job.
really good with my words. Thank
You
you.
are.
it is a
really
story of a girl called Cleo. That's my synopsis. There we go.
That's a
There we
great
go. That is
synopsis.
it.
That's
Done.
a story of a girl named Cleo in a town called Roma. And
In Mexico.
Yeah.
that's it. I wrote one down, and it's pathetic.
So hit us.
I crossed-spelled out. I'll
That's
see
a
if I can
lot
read
of
through
crossed
it.
out words.
It
Can I
is.
read it?
You can try and read it. Can you?
Okay, a housemaid to a breaking family of 4 children goes through the changing events, unsure if she will ever be able. End.
Yeah. That was it. That was my That was my attempt at a synopsis. It's terrible.
Who's Abel and why is she trying to be like
That's the thing.
him or he, she, Schlem, Schlur?
Shirley.
Yes.
Okay, that's enough. So what did we? You go. You can say something.
I think it's strange that one of the most cinematic movies of the year we all saw on Netflix.
Mm. Well, it's not strange. I mean, it's
Well,
just a
we did-
medium of how you see it. you
Yeah.
know?
And Netflix films have been trying to break into the Academy Awards for a couple of years
Yeah.
now. Beasts of No Nation was one of the first ones that
there
was talked about.
There's a
in the
doco,
circuits.
the prison one.
Yeah, I know. I can't remember
Now,
the name.
I do want to
Um,
point out that this movie was made a while ago.
Yes,
It was made a while ago. It was just acquired by Netflix.
Yes.
but I think from the get-go they had a licensing agreement because it was only out in very short release, and then less than half a month after that was when it hit Netflix. So
Yeah, it turns out Netflix has money just like every other movie studio and producer. And when you pay people to direct and to write scripts and to operate the cameras, you turn out with something that looks a lot like a movie.
well, the funny thing is, one of my favorite movies for the last couple of years, Okja,
Yes.
directed by a Korean director,
Yeah.
also another Netflix movie, also quite off the wall and not a movie you'd expect to get made in Hollywood.
Also-
Netflix is doing good stuff.
Also, Annihilation, which is another film that was acquired by Netflix, had a very tumultuous post-production stage with producers that were attached to the film being very confrontational with each other, and it ended in some very bad decisions, financially speaking, for the film and where it ended up. which I think in
It's a
regards to
shame
the Academy
because
in regards to the Academy Awards, I feel like that was another film that was overlooked. But Roma as a film is, I think it's a very, very good move by Netflix to be helping this movie along.
Yeah, I think so too.
We're living in the age of Netflix right now, where Netflix seems to be making all of these wacky and not controversial. What word am I looking for? Just
Original
Experimental.
content.
yeah, exactly. Experimenting.
Yeah.
You know, they're kind of just throwing money out there and seeing what sticks.
And sometimes it doesn't work.
It's a risk, but
a
is it
lot of the
risky
time,
though?
I think a lot of
Because their platform is kind of perfect.
that's
for
it. Like,
is.
well, when you come to the online platformers, there is a lot that you can do with them because anyone who wants to see that type of movie suddenly has access to it.
Yeah.
So of course they're going to have an audience for it. Whereas in the cinema, a lot of people go, "Oh, I've seen the trailer to this, I don't want to watch it," or "Oh, I've seen the trailer to this, I friggin' love it, so I'm going to watch it."
What's sad though, in my opinion, is that I saw this movie and after I wanted to go now and see this at the cinema, I did not have that option available to me.
Yeah.
Well, cinemas are very limited release.
Yep.
Yes.
You know, they
For a lot of these movies.
hinge on the box office.
Yes.
And they have more movies waiting to replace them in later weeks.
I feel
So
like
they-
there
money
is a small
talks.
indie cinema out there that will, in maybe 6 months' time, have a screening of this movie. And this is a movie where I'd actually go and see that screening for
I
as
feel
well.
like, you know, we talk about a lot of classics that get replayed in cinemas every couple of years. I feel like Roma is going to be one of those films that people will do a niche screening of it, like every year for maybe a couple of weeks or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Caleb, what was that warning you gave us before we started doing this podcast? About not trying
Which
to sign to...
I'm not trying to sound. I'm just saying this
Okay,
is
so
probably
it's-
what it's going to be
I
like
think it's
for people.
incredibly hard to talk about this movie without coming off as being pretentious and
Yes.
being an art house guru.
Please
Um,
forgive us. We know nothing. We're idiots. We're just talking out of our asses about.
But the
this
thing
movie.
is that this movie is styled a lot like a lot of those old Italian black and white
Yeah.
films.
It's black and white. First of all, if we haven't said that already, it's black and white. It's shot black and white.
So you
It
know
works.
it's trying to be artsy.
Yeah.
It's
Clearly.
black and white.
Is Schindler's
Clearly.
List artsy? Yeah, it is.
But is it trying to be artsy, or is it artsy by default? Like, as in,
Well, that's why I want to bring this discussion up, because you said this is art, not entertainment. I think there are films in the past which have had this pretension and are art, not entertainment. In fact, they've gone too far off the ball.
there's
being
actually
Yeah.
one that sounds very similar to the word art.
The Artist. Yes,
The Artist.
one of my
which is-
least favorite movies that got an Academy Award.
Yeah, I was on that boat as well. I remember seeing it and I thought, this is trying way too hard to be something out of the 1940s, and it just didn't. I don't feel it worked. So it might have worked for some people out there.
So-
That's fine.
So when we're talking about Roma, I feel like it's going to be so hard to talk about Roma without addressing the aura surrounding it, the
Yeah.
personal story it is of the director Alfonso
Yes.
Cuaron.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about
Is
where
it-
that story comes
How
from.
historically correct is it to him, though? I thought it was a story that he wants to tell as if he was a character. I'm not sure how true it is to his own story himself, though. I think it's more of like, you said hyper real. I think that's what it is. I think it's his telling of his events, but in a different, like, it's not the
As an
exact
adult.
events. It's
as,
like,
as an
adult
adult,
looking
but
back.
there
Yeah.
are also scenes in the film that feel like there's a childlike innocence behind the curtain.
oh,
you know what I mean?
that was
Like,
one of my major points. Is there's a purity and an innocence in this movie, even though there's such, even during the most adult themed scenes.
yeah.
You talked about earlier before the podcast about, well, we see a flaccid penis on screen for
Yes, we
about,
do.
for about 30 seconds.
But it's not like whereas lesser directors might have used that as a way to like talk about some sort of, I don't know, raw male sexuality dominating the female or something like that, something ridiculous like that. We see this scene through almost the lens of a childlike view of this relationship. This man is like swinging this weapon around, and he's talking about how martial arts has changed his life, and he's trying to impress her. But really, he's coming off as a child, really. Someone who's trying too hard to be better than what he actually is.
Well, I felt like just his nakedness kind of alluded to the fact that that's who we're supposed to believe he is deep down in his core. That's who he is. He's not wearing any masks or
Exactly,
anything.
yeah.
And then,
But even in that, he's still wearing that confidence mask of
And what's
swinging
funny
this
is
thing
he's
around.
saying
you know?
it at the same time. His words are essentially, "I'm bearing my soul to you, but
Yes.
this is about me."
Yeah, exactly.
That's the sum of his lines.
Also, look at my dick.
Yeah, I admit I covered up the screen a bit. Oh, I was like, okay, this
Were
is
you feeling a bit
awkward, yeah.
okay.
But that's like I felt a little awkward at first, but at the same time, the undercurrent of the scene was like, no, this isn't about sexuality. This is about someone who is trying to be as vulnerable as they can be to somebody else, but also trying to make sure that it is all about
You
them.
keep saying trying there. I think it's just succeeding in doing all those things.
Well, no, like the character is trying, and therefore it is success.
It succeeds in so much as the audience is receptive of what the director's trying to do, and that's what the movie's going to hinge a lot upon, is how receptive are people to this style of movie, because it's so very slow.
I don't know, because to me,
I don't find it slow.
It's how receptive you are to the main character and her storyline. I think that's what comes down to it. If you are following Cleo, if you're seeing things from her point of view, everything else just falls into place. It's not a matter of are you entertained? It's not Russell Crowe shouting at us.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt like along those lines, this film does hinge upon an audience receptiveness, but at the same time, that does not make this a bad movie. It actually means that, like, because you can tell Alfonso Cuaron believes wholeheartedly in what he's saying in this movie. The actors believe wholeheartedly in what they're saying in this film. The script, the cinematography, the sound design, everything is pouring itself
we should probably
into
point out
the story.
Alfonso Cuaron directed and wrote this, but not only that, for the first time ever, he did the cinematography for this movie. He was behind the camera.
He also co-edited it, which is another way of saying he pretty much had full control over this movie.
It's such a personal story of his. Of course, he'd want.
Well, the thing is,
there was a story that you told me about cinematographer.
His normal cinematographer, due to other commitments, couldn't make it to do the cinematography for this movie, and he convinced Alfonso himself to do the cinematography. He told him, "Go ahead, you can do it," which I think is amazing for the cinematographer to do that to any director.
But exactly how closely they must have worked for him to have that confidence.
That's the thing. We see a lot of influences of his previous work in the cinematography. Like there's long takes. There's really simple camera movements that say a lot for the character on the screen.
As soon as we had the first shot is we have a very long take on the floor being soapily washed, and then it cuts to this movie, and I instantly thought Children of Men. And then I was thinking Harry Potter. Oh wait, it's black and white. I didn't know it was black and white until it pans up until it's black and white.
Can I take the time to be a little pretentious?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm gonna be a little pretentious.
We're doing a podcast, of course you can.
That opening
we got the
scene.
corpse ready.
That's it. That opening scene where the water is washing away all the dirt and grime. For me, it felt like a little bit of a visual metaphor in retrospect after I finished the movie, of kind of visually telling us, okay, this character is we're gonna start in a very clean place. Everything is normal. Everything's fine. And then just constantly more and more crap just fills the screen as the water tries to wash it away. And then by the end of it, it's all clean. It's all fine. Everything's going back to normal.
Well, for me, it was a plot point, funnily enough, because it's later on, there's a conflict between her and the mum. First of all, Cleo is played by, I think this is how you say it, Yalitza Aparicio. I don't know apparently.
I think that's how you say it.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Well, you've got, out of the three of us, you've got more cultural...
I'm Scottish, so I have...
By default.
Wait, hang on a sec.
Born with more culture.
Should my cliche be I pronounce everything wrong if I'm Scottish?
You said that you knew how to speak a little bit of Spanish, so that kind of helped when you
a little bit.
Trying to twist my words around.
Well, let's just agree that Scotty has more culture and he has more authority to speak on multiculturalism. Because people are born different and some are born better than us.
I will admit, the script in this movie does mean that even for the non-Spanish viewer, you're able to understand things without sometimes even relying on the subtitles.
Yeah. Well, on that point,
subtitles.
I don't like subtitles. I'm the kind of person that my attention, it's very hard to divide between looking at subtitles and looking back up the screen at what's going on. And that frustrates me a lot. So I tend to stay away from films that have subtitles, but I found myself halfway through the film, it was no longer an issue for me. I was just really invested in it.
I find subtitles are actually useful in French movies because it takes away from the nudity that's going on screen. Sorry.
Scotty, the anti-nudist.
When it's awkward. When there are subtitles in a film, it's fine. I don't normally have a problem with it. Of course, you do have to take that few milliseconds to look down.
I think people
and
have
read,
can have
which is
issues
fine.
with it.
Yeah.
I think the average person can read subtitles. That's
Yeah.
fine. I do like it in movies where there's foreign language, but they're not using subtitles, because that in and of itself is making a statement. Is pay attention to what's going on, not what they're saying. But yeah, no, this movie, it's there are lots of things you can pick up visually. Of course, you do need to read the subtitles to understand the dialogue, the story,
context
and
of what's
everything,
happening,
because there's not a ton of plot in this movie. I'd say there's a lot of story, but there's not a lot of plot, if that makes sense.
What is your definition of plot?
I suppose that's what it depends
Okay,
on.
I think I know what you're trying to say. The
Things
plot.
happen in the movie.
Wait, hold on. I want to hear what his version of what a plot is first.
Okay.
I want to hear what it is.
Put me on the
What it
spot.
is.
I don't know. Is plot. I'm sure it has an official definition. How I've always understood plot to mean is just what happens and what changes and what progresses in the
Whoa.
story.
There's heaps that changes in this story.
In the characters, yes, but
I think I actually know what you're trying to say.
externally.
There are a lot of things happening externally in this movie which do come into the main plot and are important points. So, for example, in the background, the Corpus Christi massacre happens in the background of one of these scenes.
Right.
And the characters are walking through this. A terrible massacre that happened in Mexico in 1971 or 1970. 120 people died in it, and it is a massive tragedy.
Students were getting shot and killed on site.
By government-trained shock troopers, which is also a major plot point in this movie too.
Yeah.
But it's also a side. It's like it's not directly involved.
See,
But it's there.
My viewpoint of plot and character is there was actually a great summary of what it is by a professional writer in Hollywood. I can't remember what his name is, but he said, "Look, if anyone asks me about the difference between character and plot, I say, well, how can a body survive without lungs and a heart? It's you need both for a film to be a movie. It's not a matter of one taking precedence over the other. It's they have to they all automatically exist.
So
within
then the
same-
question is, Caleb, did you see the main character? I assume Cleo is in your mind the main character.
Yeah.
Did you see her have a character arc in this movie? It's a hard question to
It is
answer.
a hard question to ask
Because-
it's how much. What barometer are you using
Exactly.
to measure the change of the character?
Because to me-
they go through a lot.
She goes through a lot, and she does have moments of growth. But to me, where the movie is nice bookend. I like to use this term, bookend, with how it begins and ends, in the fact that she is doing her job in this family where she is serving as the
housemaid. We start the film where she is a housemaid, and she's kind of just. She is treated like a housemaid. She's not treated as part of the family. She is to a point. She's treated like part of the family by the children, but there is a threat there. Like she when she first finds out, spoiler alert, that she's pregnant, she's afraid to go to the mistress of the house because there is a precedent there where she can be aggressive. And it's obvious to us as the audience seeing that, knowing that, okay, this character has a history with these other characters, that she is known to just fire people on the spot maybe, or she's been known to be aggressive towards her housemaids.
or other people have. It might not
or other
necessarily be
people
her.
have, exactly.
I think the scene for me that symbolizes this at the start is the family is watching the television, and she is picking up dishes on the sides, and then she sits down, and one of the kids puts his arm
around her, yeah.
and she watches for, and then the mum asks, "Can I get a cup of tea, please?"
Yeah, and back to work.
Back to work.
Yeah.
So there's this clear separation between family, which that's the thing. From the start, though, her relationship with the kids is.
Well, they say "I love you" a lot.
She's the second mother.
She is the second mother, which reminds me of movies like The Help, or even stuff like Mary Poppins, where she's the nanny and she's got more better relationship with the kids than the parents do.
But one of the arcs that I saw for her was by the end of this film, she was actually accepted as part of the family by the mother.
That was, to me, the emotional arc of this movie is her realizing who her family is, and they accepting her as their family.
Yeah, her real family, and as opposed to one that she thought she could have had with Fermin, her boyfriend at the start of the film.
And what I find interesting is it's almost a throwaway line where she, one of the other housemaids asks if she tells her to go visit her mother because her mother is just, the government's just taken the land away. Another plot point going on in the background that's just thrown away, but it's just very naturally done. It's like sometimes things like this come from completely left field, but no, this feels completely natural. It feels like things that are just naturally happening.
Yeah.
And she says, "No, I don't want her to see me like this." and whatever this means, spoilers. There's some things I actually don't want us to say.
There's a cultural understanding there, because I'd imagine that a young Mexican woman who gets pregnant out of wedlock would not be treated so kindly by her own family. Which is something that's very evident. I think we can actually take a look at that and see that in the actual culture itself. And instead of highlighting this, Alfonso decides, no, this is something that the characters know and are familiar with. Therefore, it is not important to us, the audience, to go into any more detail other than that this is something that happens.
I think one of the keys to this movie is how it treats social reform. And the things that are going on in Mexico at the same time is it's not shown through plot points, as one of the reasons what plot points you find hard to talk about, like if it's a story or not, but through character actions. So when Fermin calls her a servant, I feel like that is so much more important to what's going on in Mexico and in the storyline than anything else.
Yeah,
it's about attitude.
Especially for Fermin's attitude, because we see him later partaking in the slaughter of these students. Like, he's holding a gun and he's going after these people. And there's a like,
Fermin has a tragic story.
Exactly, yeah. Like one of his first lines when we first see him, actually, they're taking her and her friend Cleo and her fellow housemaid out to a date, him and his cousin, I believe it is. And they collect them and they go out, and then he rushes back to the table where she was sitting at, takes her drink, drinks it, puts it back and leaves. And just that action alone says a lot about his character.
It's such a great character moment, and it's also quite funny.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of this, I find quite a lot of this movie quite like funny, like just natural comedy, like situational comedy.
Incidental situational comedy, yeah.
Caleb, you've got a big, deep thought in your head right now. I feel like it's rushing to come out.
I'm just thinking maybe this movie, it's so hard. Once you learn how personal this story was to the director, it's almost seems like the movie was a bit of catharsis for him, revisiting that part of his life and his childhood and the person that had a huge impact on him. I don't know how much of it is matter of fact, this is what happened, and is an artistic license.
I think there's a lot of artistic license.
Oh, massively. And I think, like, along those lines, I don't think it really matters which is what is real and what is fake.
I agree.
Simply because the subtext of the film takes precedence. It's so much more important than which was real and which was manufactured, because it's all working towards a common goal. And that, I think, is the point of the film. It's to elicit the same feelings in us, the audience, that he felt when he was a child, surrounded by this love and affection.
I'd just be so interested to know what the people close to him and who grew up with him think about the movie.
I would be curious as well.
It'd be really interesting to see, because I'd want to know who Cleo is. And what she thinks of it, if she's still alive.
At the end of the movie, it says for someone, and that someone, I assume, is his Cleo.
Yeah. Because I assume that he was the little kid, like his fictitious version of himself in the film was the little kid that was always like, I had a past life and I died, kind of thing. And he's talking about his dreams in vivid descriptions and stuff like that. And I don't
think it takes anything away from the movie, the idea of artistic license or being different from the reality, because
it's all fine. A movie's a movie.
But it just reminds me of like a Stephen Fry quote when he came to Australia 3 or 4 years ago. He's like, a lot of people use the truth to lie, and literature is telling lies to tell the truth. And I think that's what this movie is trying to do. It's not trying to
hoodwink the audience. It's not trying to force the audience to do anything.
Like we were just talking about, the last movie we reviewed was Mule, and there are a lot of emotional contrivances where things are set up to make you feel a certain way, or the characters act in a certain way, and it comes off fake. Whereas, and it's meant to be based on a true story. Whereas this, everything just feels natural.
And even though
it feels like life.
It
feels like things just happen. Some things that are out of control or in control of the characters, but it feels very much like life.
Well, I mean, it is very much slice of life. It reminds me of old Russian slice of life plays. You brought up a director reminded you of.
I can't remember his name now.
Tarkovsky, I think.
Tarkovsky.
Tarkovsky.
Yeah. Because his works are very much, they're very subtle. They're very focused and steeped in just being real and honest. even through, you know, like we're saying, telling lies to tell the truth, or using lies to tell the truth. And that's what it reminded me. He was also a filmmaker that did utilize a lot of black and white in his films.
I think one of the things that helps this movie, well, I mean, it's so important to understand this movie is the cinematography, because
especially from someone who hasn't, like, he must have done studied cinematography, but he hasn't really shown his.
It's masterful. All of it is masterful. It's a top tier cinematography job.
Yeah.
And I love that there's so much more you can see in a black and white film than you could see in color, I feel.
I think I know what you mean.
It's just a weird... I know, I'm not saying it properly.
Everything pops out more because
light pollution.
Yeah, that's true.
It's sort of just, there's so much stimulus.
Like, there's one scene where a character's, the sun is behind them, and it actually, I think if it was in color, it would have actually been too much, but because it was in black and white, it had a nice effect.
There was another scene where Fermin is at his training camp, and he's lined up with all these other guys, and there's some wide shots there, and if it was in color, you could definitely pick him out, but because it's in black and white, he just blends into the rest of the crowd, which I thought was an interesting way to utilize that. Speaking of that scene, I love that scene.
That's a fantastic scene. There's so much going on in that scene, though, as well, to unpack it. But at the same time, just on the note, on the face value, it's just an entertaining scene.
It's a great comedic scene because there's all these, you know, martial artist wannabes that are training, and then this celebrity martial artist shows up, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, it's him." And Cleo is watching from the sidelines, waiting to talk to her now ex-boyfriend. And he says, "I will show you a magic trick. I will show you this amazing feat of human strength." And all he does is he gets a blindfold put on him, and he stands on one leg with his arms up in the air like this, and everyone's like,
just to clarify for those listening, he puts his hands on his head.
Yes, he puts his hands up above his head, and he's balancing on one leg. And he hears all the people laughing and snickering, and then he says, "Oh, you think this is easy? Okay, you guys try it. Close your eyes, stand on one leg." And none of them can do it. And then we shift over to Cleo and the rest of the women, and the women start to try and do it as well, and none of them can do it. But Cleo does it perfectly.
Yeah.
First try. And it's a metaphorical thing.
It's saying, like, here's a hero.
Yes, exactly.
But it's not on the nose. Once again, it's not on the nose. No. It's not anything that feels stupid. It feels completely earned.
Yeah, because, well, it's contextual. I mean, he shows up at the right place where he should be to talk to these students and to show all this other stuff. And
that's the face value. On the behind the scenes, these people are being brainwashed to become shock troopers for the government. Yeah. And then they go and commit mass murder later on, and these are the same people.
Which I didn't even think of when I first, I kind of put it together. I was like, oh, okay, that's why he was there. He was training, but I wasn't sure if that was the connection to the actual real world. So that was, thank you for illuminating me, Scotty.
Well, I was checking things during the movie. One thing I will say, once again, I'm glad, so I'm actually happy that I saw this at home, because as things were happening in the movie, I was doing things. So, for example, in that scene, I tried doing it.
You tried doing it?
I didn't close my eyes, but I tried doing it. And I could do it a little bit, but not brilliantly. And then there's another scene where the housemaids are doing some exercises.
Oh, that's right.
And I did them as well. I actually paused it, rewound it, and just started doing the exercise with them.
It felt like you were right there.
Well, you were getting really into the movie.
No, that's 4D. The thing. It felt
like... You saw it in 4D.
I felt like the movie was welcoming in. It was like I was being introduced to people.
Yeah.
That had this community aspect to it where I felt like this movie I was being invited into.
That's a great point, yeah. There is a sense of community, especially between the characters, because you want them all to get along
and they don't in a very realistic way.
Yeah.
It's like real life. It's like people have fights in real life, and when it's shown on screen, it feels so much more cataclysmic than it does in real life. Because I mean, a fight is just a fight. It's just one moment in a person's relationship. But where if it's on screen, well, it's on screen for a reason.
Yeah.
Whereas this...
It has weight to it.
This, when the mother, who's played by Marina Di Tavira, who is another fantastic character in this movie, and probably has, I mean, apart from Cleo, has the most clear character arc.
I'm pretty sure she has more lines than Cleo as well throughout the film. But continue.
I forgot what I was going to say. There's too much to say.
The mother. The mother. You're saying something about the mother.
When they have a fight, it's her telling her off, but at the same time, it's her lashing out for other reasons.
Yeah. Well, we are introduced very early on to the breakup of the relationship between the mother and the father, who leaves her for, I don't know, side piece of arse.
Burnley showed, not told as well.
Yeah, exactly. We're not told exactly why he's left or what the circumstances of it all are. It's kind of like we're being, again, shown from a childlike perspective of, you know, the kids aren't sure why their father is leaving. They just know that he's leaving.
Once again, the cinematography, I think, plays a big deal into this because the fact that the way the camera moves, it's often on Cleo, and it's her perspective, what's going on.
Yeah.
But at the same, when they're traveling through the streets, it's fantastic because
I was reminded a lot of Wes Anderson.
It's very Wes Anderson,
but less theatrical. Like obviously, Wes Anderson has this theatrical style to his films
it's very Notice Me.
It actually reminded me a bit of.
Well, not so much Notice Me. It's just like I feel like it's just a personal style that he likes. You know what I mean?
But you can't help but notice it.
It's a quirk.
Yeah.
It's a quirk.
It's a quirk. Yeah. But this, it just feels like you're running alongside the other side of the street, just looking over at them. You know what I mean? Like that's what it felt like.
It reminded me of some of the scenes in Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro's great movie from last year, where it has that same sort of, not fairy tale, but
this is a lived in environment. I feel like Alfonso just set up on the side of the street when real stuff was happening and just filmed and nobody noticed the camera.
Well, that's the thing.
There.
Just imagine how hard these shots were to film because there's hundreds of extras in the background. The camera's going right across all of them because as they're walking through the streets. And then it turns and it's all one shot and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. A lot of work has been put into the cinematography. Across the board, this whole film, a lot of work has been
we're talking about the martial arts sequence. How many extras are in that scene all performing perfectly?
And it's not just, if you've noticed, I don't think there was just one group either. There was a couple in the background off somewhere else that were doing other stuff as well.
Yep.
There would have been hundreds of extras and there would have been different extras in each of these scenes, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
So there was one thing I wanted to get into because I'm still... It's so well done, this movie. But I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence because it's just... trying to think of what I'm going to say. Is it the art? It's an experience. The whole movie is an experience. You're invited in to share an experience with the family.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what it is. It's
But you could say Alfonso's done this before with Gravity. That's, in my opinion, a experience movie as well. It's like a theme park ride, that movie.
Well, I go back to Children of Men, the scene in the car, the long shot in the car. That is what I keep thinking of when I see this, like Roma. That even though it's a completely different type of scene, and it's like it ends.
Roma starts with a long shot.
Yes, but like that's what I feel like when you're in the car with these people in Children of Men. You are invited into their world because they're not talking about plot. They're not talking about, you know, where they're headed or what big dangerous deeds they're supposed to be doing. They're just talking like real human beings. And you're like, oh, I'm in this car and, you know, I feel like I'm part of this little family that they've created. And then tragedy strikes and then she gets shot in the neck and, you know, all of that other stuff starts happening.
There is actually this problem with popular entertainment where plot points have to be big and explosive. And they have to be like the hero and the villain.
Yeah, have to be obvious.
But this problem's been around for years. I think in Jane Austen's novel Emma, she brings this point out perfectly, where one of the side characters has this moment where she falls in love with another character, and Emma thinks it's because of this hero coming in to save her, but no, it's just because someone offered to help her out at a dance. And
I can't believe you just dropped Jane Austen's name into a film podcast.
Well.
I thought, that's well done.
Yeah,
that's great.
Okay.
I
think Caleb's more correct than you, but
if you're gonna, hey, I mean, it's just pretentious is as pretentious does.
Look, clearly, if you don't like this film, you just didn't get it. Okay.
No,
you're just not. The type of
if
person.
you don't like this film, I would love to hear why.
I think
I think it's worth exploring.
Well, with popular entertainment today, you want things that are flashy. You want things that happen. This film is slow. It is slow. Like.
You want things to happen to you.
It's on the same platform where I can see Transformers. Therefore, it's got to entertain me and it's going to keep my attention span. It's got to make me not think about life. It's got to make me switch off, right? No, there's thousands of different forms of media and movies.
Exactly.
There is a scene at the end of this movie, which for me is more tense than anything in any of those movies, though, because it's a character moment where she can't swim. The kids are out at sea.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Well, it's not like let's not mention the reason why the crux of the emotional hit so hard. But continue.
She goes out, and the camera is on her. So she at a side, so she's slowly walking towards the sea, and you can't see much what's going on. But these kids have already been warned, and they've gone further out to sea. They've been pulled out by the current. She has to go, and she can't swim. And the camera slowly follows her as she goes into the water. She grabs one. Then the second one pops up out of the water. The wave pushes her down again. You can hardly see her. She's gone again for a bit. And then she finally gets grabbed and pulled back in. And that, to me, that was tense.
Yeah.
That was, are these kids going to die?
Throughout the whole movie, you have no idea what's going to happen next.
That's true.
Much like life. But it's all pretty tame for the first and second act. And then the third act, it hits the fan. Lots of things start happening.
All of the actions that characters took in the first two acts.
Oh yeah, it all like
the ramifications for every single one of them start to appear, and you realize just the weight of those decisions that were made earlier suddenly start to become.
Yeah, I think the mum once again is a great character to use for this because she falls apart.
Yeah,
and then at the end she pulls herself back together again.
Well, that is almost all of our major characters. Like even Farmin, he talks about how, his parents got killed and he was an orphan, and
martial arts has saved him.
Martial arts has saved him and taught him how to live on the street and all this other stuff. And he's gone through again relationships that have broken down. People have died, and stuff has happened to him where it's not good, and he's had to try and make his own way out of it. And then we see Cleo. Cleo is the focal point of this movie, where a lot of that stuff is happening to her currently, and then we look at the mother, who we start the film with that stuff happening to her, and we see her going through the motions of loss and grief, it's each of these characters tend to mirror each other in a lot of their issues.
I think one of the cool things is the characters see themselves in each other in this movie. I think the mother sees herself in Cleo. And I think that's one of the reasons that brings them so close near the end of the movie, is that I feel like they both see that they are understood in the other person.
Yeah.
The thing that gets me with this movie is that I don't know if it seems, spoilers for the end. No, seriously, because people, if they're interested in seeing this kind of movie, I would really recommend them go to see it.
Yeah. So if before we go into spoilers, if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, go see it.
You have enough information.
Stop listening. Go see it now.
It's just so interesting to see for yourself, even if you don't necessarily like it.
We've only seen this movie once, and we want to see this movie again because there's so much to talk about in this movie that I don't feel like a specialist on this movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, I don't feel like I 100% understand it. But near the end, it's almost like I feel like the theme, what the movie was trying to say was that they were all the family that they needed all along, it's beautiful. It is beautiful, but I wonder how much of that is just the beauty of hindsight and Alfonso Cuaron looking back on his own life and saying. And with that knowledge, or with that feeling of this is my family that I grew up with, and these are the things that they went through, but all we needed was each other at the end. How much of it was him looking back on that? I think
one thing that Slice of Life, and this is Slice of Life, does often is that I said it bookends the beginning and the end. Well, the thing is, nothing changes in Slice of Life. Events happen, but people stay the same.
Well,
and although people have changed in this movie, the situation hasn't too much.
Well, Dan Harmon has a great little blog post on storytelling and stuff like that, and how he's taken real stories and turned them into fictional ones to prove a point or tell the audience something that he wants to convey to them. And he said, you take a character in a very familiar situation, something happens and they have to change, or they're going to die, or they're going to be run over by life, or something drastic happens, and then they have to choose, okay, what am I going to do from here? And then they make a choice and they learn from it. They return back to their original circumstances, having changed, but they're still in those original circumstances, because that is life. Like, if I go out and I go to work and I don't know, let's say due to somebody else's negligence, I get injured and I go to hospital and I have to overcome all this stuff and I'm no longer earning money, and suddenly, I realize the importance of, I don't know, health and safety in the workplace or something like that. But then I come back from the hospital, I go back home, and after weeks of rehab, I go back to work. But I am more conscious of, being safe or something like that. It's a very real thing. And that's a terrible example. But I feel it is a real thing. And on the lines of, the whole topic of family is, this is the family you've always needed. I didn't feel like that was something that they pushed in the film. I feel like...
No, I don't feel it was pushed. It was very much the subtext, though.
Yeah. And I felt more that, it was, the point of it was, especially with the ending the way it was more like, look, you're going to go through stuff in life. Some stuff is going to beat you down. You are going to change from it. But as long as you keep going, it will all come back to a safe place in the end. And that's what I
don't know about safe place. I think that life just goes on. I think that's more.
I feel like that's.
But like with the home being a safe place.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people don't have the safe place to go back to, which is another interesting thing. I think it's worth mentioning is that this whole family is very upper middle class. There's a whole.
I would say more so, given that they're living in Mexico.
Yeah.
Well, there's this national turmoil that's going on around them, and yet by the end of it, they don't seem to come out of it very affected by those political events.
Well, they're obviously not involved
in the country.
They're obviously not directly involved in it.
Yeah, but some of their problems almost seem quaint with that as the backdrop.
That's true.
Huge.
I think that's deliberate, though. I think they're trying to show that to these people these issues are massive, but to the wider nation they aren't important in the slightest. I think the hospital highlights that.
Especially with the baby in the crib with the debris all over the
that's a harsh scene,
but the baby's still living.
Really,
I know the baby is still alive in that scene, though.
As a father, that really hit me. That was hard to watch.
Once
my brain realized what had happened,
that's a beautifully shot scene, because you have she's there looking at these kids, and then
through the window. But
the family, the grandma and the sister of one of the new babies, it's like, I'll braid her hair and stuff like this. It's like, it's these natural lines that are sweet but not sickly sweet or over the top sweet.
Yeah,
just like, oh, that's nice that she's saying all these things, and then reality hits.
Yeah, and it just happens.
Yeah,
and things just happen.
And the first response for the grandmother and the daughter standing next to her is, quick, kneel down. And you think, oh, they're going to try and get underneath something to hide. But no, they're praying. They're praying, which is a cultural, it's a very big cultural thing for them. Which there's a lot of world building in this film that just feels natural.
Well, world building because it's taken from the world.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so natural.
We go back to the mule. That did not world build very well at all. That was actually really bad at it, even though that was supposed to be taken from the real world. But every scene in Roma feels populated with real people. Even the extras just feel real.
It feels like these shots were taken from the 1970s. So,
but you could probably take a still from this movie and expect to see it in a history magazine or something like that. And that's I found it incredibly interesting to see just how impactful the cinematography really was in this film.
And look, for some people, it might be too slow of a burn.
Yes.
For some people, it might just take too long to say what they feel like might be nothing at all. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I think, look, it's not for everyone.
No.
Okay?
No.
People can be used to a certain... I'm trying to say this without sounding like I'm calling you a prick for not getting the movie, but...
but you kind of are. All right?
I understand.
I'm kidding.
No, it's just...
If I'm going to be honest...
used to a certain type of movie, and you watch this movie and you just might not be able to get into it. That's fine.
And for me, the first probably half an hour to 45 minutes, I felt that way. I felt like, wow, this is kind of dragging. But then after the halfway point, all of the stuff that felt like it was dragging the movie down before suddenly became very important and very high stakes, and it was all involved. It felt like the stuff that was
get
dragging it
attached
down.
and drawn into the family and Cleo and her life and everything.
And I suddenly felt by the end of the film, I was walking out of a real place. Like the film had become something real.
It's brimming with humanity.
Yeah.
This movie.
And I feel like that is so hard to do. Like if you've ever tried writing or anything like that, anything creative, it is so hard to really capture the essence of realism. It's quite easy to just come off with something off the top of your head and go, that's fun, or that's
but
good.
not only that, but give it the time and care and attention to detail to present it in that way as well.
Because I mean, it could have been so like if I found myself constantly as someone who wants to make movies. Looking at this film, I learned so much because in retrospect, looking back at when it was dragging, I would have been, as a director, I would have been, no, we've got to jump to this because this is more important and that's more important to happen to the characters and this is where we got to go. No, it takes a lot of skill and also a lot of self-awareness to be able to look back at your own style and go, no, we need to take the time to give these characters the means and the reason to exist in this world. And
Jordan, recently we've watched a lot of, well, frankly, shit movies.
That is true.
And then we watched Roma, and all of a sudden, that's why we watch movies.
Yeah, I feel, I without trying to sound too pretentious, I feel like Roma is a film
We've failed at that.
We have.
We're pretentious pricks. Sorry, guys.
It's gone. I'm sorry to all you guys who hated this movie. But like this film, I feel like it's something that I will watch at least once a year to kind of just get back in tune with why I fell in love with movies.
To me, it feels like you've had a heavy meal and then someone brings out a dessert that's wonderfully constructed and but it's not overly sweet. It's just
it's healthy.
It's healthy.
It's a healthy meal.
And you feel after you eat it, you feel I no longer feel too full. I just feel satisfied.
Yeah,
and like that's how
interesting comparison.
Because I feel like
I've made a lot of comparisons with cooking and film before. I think this is crap.
I feel refreshed. I feel like I've had a glass of lemonade after
a walk in the desert.
After a hot day.
After a walk in the desert, you had a fresh glass of lemonade.
Yeah, true. Yeah, fair enough. I think movies tend to just cover up the reality of life. It's a movie. You want it's
an expression of what you wish life was.
Exactly. It's a fantasy. It's a fantasy. Whereas this is just a window into a life of a family in the 1970s in Mexico.
Yeah.
And they're
I mean that should be the synopsis. A window into a family in Mexico,
a window into
That's it.
That's it.
That's all, folks.
I think that's well.
Anything more that anyone's wanting to say about this? Because I don't know. I feel like we could just talk forever about it.
I could,
but we need to cut it off at some point.
I think
we mentioned like the plot is really natural, but I think there's things that come back so that it's very well constructed. The storyline.
Mm-hmm. I think everything is really well constructed.
There are
the kids are great.
Moments.
The kids are great as well.
Oh, they are. They're fantastic.
I don't even
the
mention how good they are.
performances, also the dialogue that the kids have just feels very like you've taken it out of listening. Like you must have just literally just sat down and recorded kids for a couple of hours just playing with each other and just being children.
They play Skeletrix.
I feel technically it is flawless. I don't think there was a better way of doing anything that the director wanted to do. I think on that technical aspect, it was amazing. It was incredible, especially the acting. The acting was great.
But even like little things, I don't know if anyone noticed this, but we go back to the bookend of the beginning and the end.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning and end is also strangely oddly capped off with an airplane flying in the background, which is another thing I was like...
The ending. It began with that. as well.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like it was bookended by
You've seen the tiles, and then as it becomes
the plane through the
reflection of the sky,
and that was
and the plane. And I'm sure that means something. I'm just too stupid to figure it out.
Well, I just felt it as another way to introduce us as the audience to a real world, like planes fly in the sky. People exist outside of what you're seeing. This isn't just the main story, Like it just felt like it was part of that. But I could be wrong. It could mean something phenomenally deeper than that.
And that's one thing I don't like about films that are too artsy and it's all surreal and it's all metaphorical and symbolic. Because either it means exactly what the director had in mind, he just doesn't want to tell you right now, or it's designed to be a blank slate for you to project whatever you want onto it.
I agree.
There's a couple of scenes that are almost surreal, feel a little bit artsy.
Are you talking about the song? The
Yeah,
song?
yeah.
The Norwegian song.
However, I do feel that there is a meaning and a purpose for that.
Uh-huh.
I don't like it when films are all of that, where it's all this all has a meaning and a purpose.
I'll be honest,
just have to
that
figure
song
it out.
is my least favorite point in the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
I would agree with that. That is my least favorite. I did some reading up on it,
It's
though.
not so much of a puzzle.
No. But I did some reading up on it, though, and the whole reason why the family goes there, and you actually get a little bit of it in the dialogue conversations before they even leave, where the children are asking, oh, why do we have to go? Why are we going here? They're a bunch of gringos, they don't speak our language, all this other stuff. And they're like, no, we're going because they're family to us and all this other stuff. And then when we get there, we realize that just because they're rich, there is still like a huge cultural disparity between them as a family and these white Norwegian family that have invited them to stay with them. Like their mansion is 3 times bigger. There's so much more.
They're just
stuff
firing
going on.
gunshots
Yeah,
here, there,
firing
and other.
gunshots into the woods, and
for
that
fun.
song apparently was used. I don't know 100% what it's about, but apparently it's along the lines of the difference between social classes. That's what the song that he was singing is about.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
Because that social reform is a big thing that's going on in the background of this movie.
Yes.
Is it trying to make a comparison? Well, is it trying to say that the upper class are the ones who are having to put the fires out?
No, because if you notice during the scene, the upper class aren't even touching any of the buckets. It's the children, the women, and the servants that are doing it. All of the men are standing by and just watching it happen.
What?
Yeah.
I thought, really?
They organize it.
They organize. They're telling everyone where to go. One of them comes in carrying a bucket,
okay.
but then he gives the bucket to the child next to him, and the child puts the fire out.
Oh.
So it's almost like a statement of these are the higher
that.
class, and they're doing nothing to help with what is going
That
on.
definitely deserves a rewatch just for that.
I mean, there's so much reasons to rewatch this movie.
But everything else is so matter of fact.
I think
presented.
it's a key point that the female characters in this movie, like females as the heroines, like a lot of times in Hollywood movies,
Ocean's remake, Ghostbusters remake.
female characters to be the leads have to
For
act
a
like male
political
characters.
agenda. Whether it's
Political agenda.
agenda.
Yeah.
Apple's getting involved.
We have to, as women, we have to, do what men do, but better. But that's not the case at all in Roma. It feels like real women trying to survive as women do in that era with all of the things.
And
that
as
they
3
have
men, we
available to them.
support this.
Honestly,
as anyone would be trying to survive and keep their head above water.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's very understandable.
Yeah.
it's very relatable.
They're they come out, I suppose you could say that they do become stronger.
Yes.
I mean, there's no way of going through what they went through and not coming out the other end stronger.
Well, we do see evidence of that with especially the emotional turn after she rescues the kids from the ocean and the implications of her admitting that fault, not just to herself but to the people around her family now. There's a lot of character growth,
And that's the crux of that's really the point where I have mixed feelings. Because I don't know if it's the director putting a spin on that. On the reality of it. I mean, I know as a movie you can leave it at that, but because it's a movie that's like, this is a slice of life. It feels like real life. And
Personal.
with real life, we have choices and there are different pathways that we can take. And sometimes we can talk about how, the path that led me here must have been the right path because I'm here. Whereas in reality, life, you could have taken a million different paths and had a million different lives.
Yeah.
So that point just makes me wonder how much of it is the director looking back and saying, this is probably all the best. It all worked out for the best. When in reality, it's just.
I'm not sure if it did work out for the best, to be honest. I feel like there is still a lot of stuff that we leave on at the end of that film that is unresolved. But for the most part, we can be safe and secure in knowing that life does go on. And I feel like
that's fair. That's a good
I feel
point.
like that's
a good point.
I feel like because he doesn't focus too much on that for me to question that choice. You know what I mean? Like there's not too much like I need to pound the audience with this idea or I need to drive it home to them with this. But there was none of that. It was kind of like the characters came to that realization themselves, and we were just witness to that. We were just there, accepting what was going on. And then by the end of it, it was kind of like. Life goes on.
Caleb, have you seen 4 Billboards?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
To me, it has the same sort of thing where it's not about what there's a central mystery in 4 Billboards, but it's never really resolved.
No.
And that's because that's not what the movie's about. I feel like this movie has the same sort of thing. It's not really about change. It's about these moments these characters are going through.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I felt like it at the end. It didn't need that I felt like it attempted to have a resolution. That's for me. Did you guys feel like it had a resolution?
I think I know what you mean.
I believe one character in particular had a huge resolution, and that was Cleo in that arc. Whereas the mother already had her resolution actually a couple of beats, a couple of scenes beforehand,
right.
And she was already wrapped up. But this scene was. I found it. Are we going to talk about spoilers? Can we just talk about spoilers?
We already said that.
I can't explain. I can't explain this without. Okay, when she does come back with the kids and save their lives, and she admits to the rest of the family that she didn't want her own child after her child is born dead, and she was petrified and frightened, and then she finally goes, I didn't want to have it. I didn't want to bring that child into this world. And there's a moment, the reason for me why this suddenly comes up now as a resolution is because she's buried this so deep, and then her actions of willingly going out into the ocean, into a place where she cannot swim, into a place that will kill her, is her actively saying, no, I am not that person. I am better than that. And I love these kids. I love these kids more than myself. And so for me, that was one of the best character resolutions that I've seen in a very long time.
Because it's really a self-realization moment. Because from the get-go, you can tell she loves these kids.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's it. I'm just torn because I don't know how much of it is the director looking back on it and trying to put a nice spin on things. Because I think it's fairly safe to assume that probably didn't happen in that way.
Probably not.
I mean, it's
definitely not.
So it was definitely a choice by him to put that in.
I would say
whether or not it's true. I mean, I'm inclined to believe he believes it. He believes that it's true.
Well, I think we're going back into the whole difference between, utilizing lies to tell truth here, because I feel like I can probably safely say about 75% of the narrative in this film probably didn't happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
the point is, it's mundane. Yeah. The point is, these kids almost drowned, which is treated later on, just at the end of the movie.
Yeah, they go and tell their grandmother, we almost drowned, kind of thing. And
which is such a...
It's such a child thing to do, and
that's very true.
Taken matter of fact.
And like I've gone through things where I've made horrible choices and I've done things that have hurt other people. And seeing Cleo as a character, like she didn't actively do anything wrong when her child was born. But her emotions were, I don't want this child. I don't want this. I don't want this. And so
it's understandable as well. That's the thing.
Absolutely,
you see what she's going through as a housemaid, as a person of within her social class, not wanting to bring and without a partner to support her. That would be a horrible position to bring a child into.
Yeah, especially with a partner like Fomin. He was a dick. He's a massive dick.
It only feels different because it seems to add a nice.
You think that the conclusion's too tidy?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. That's really what I mean. It feels compared to the rest of the movie, where not everything was purposefully fairly messy. Yeah, it did feel nice and a bit tidy.
But I didn't find it tidy at all.
I can understand where you're coming from.
It made it nice because it wrapped it up in a nice bow that all they needed was each other. That as a family that they can.
But at the same time, it made sense in the movie.
It does make sense.
It
does make sense.
Also along those lines, I didn't feel like it was as tidy as I didn't see it as tidy as you might have seen it. I don't know why.
It's more that there's a moment.
It was those candid conversations afterwards that told me that this family is probably going to go through more struggles in the future. This is not like this is not the end of the line.
Going to go through struggles in the future.
And because of that, I look at that ending not being tidy. I look at it as a resolution of the now, as opposed to what could happen like after the film has ended. And I think that's another point as well. This film doesn't feel like it is ended when the credits roll. It feels like these people are alive enough that this story continues
Which
on.
is why I think it begins and ends with a long shot.
Yeah.
It's like this long shot is almost like a freeze effect of the storyline. Like this is your intro and this is your outro, but the story's still
not only that, but you can hear you hear the cleaning going on at the very start, even before you hear the water.
Digex.
You hear the ambient noise of just life and the wind and everything.
And
The dog,
The dog's fantastic.
aircraft going
And
overhead.
you just know
the
that,
wind.
okay, there's life that's going on. Even though I can't see everything, I know that beyond the borders of the screen, things are going on, and there's a
That
world.
hail looked amazing.
The hail. Oh yeah, the hail. Yeah,
Yeah.
the kids playing out in the hail. And yeah.
But in the black and white, it does.
It does.
It looked brilliant.
And that
So
was
many
another-
things pop.
Yeah.
The contrast is just, it's amazing.
I love the
that's-
cinema scenes as well when they're at the cinema for the same reason.
Yeah. There's the scene where he finds out that she's pregnant,
Yeah.
and then there's he makes
and
the
the-
choice to leave the scene, and the
aircraft
Yeah.
just
crashes.
as it's coming down, it's like,
Did you guys see?
Like
The gravity reference that he slipped in there?
with the astronauts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Absolutely.
Hi guys,
Well,
I directed
apparently-
Gravity. All right, let's move on.
This is a side note, and I do believe that movies should stand on their own.
Yep.
But as a side note, apparently he was inspired to make Gravity by Marooned, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
I think, which was a 1969 or something
It could have been that movie.
movie.
It might have been that movie.
It might have been that movie, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
No, not at all. Not at all. I do think the director was really close to the material, so it's natural to question how close is too close.
Yeah.
Because he could like.
Because to me, this film
things
was
could-
honest.
I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
that's it.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that is as close as you should get if you're being honest and not trying to paint someone else as an. Even his father wasn't painted as a dick. You know what I mean? Like he didn't even.
Well, that's it. It's all just
Fermin wasn't
so
painted as
matter
a
of
dick.
fact,
It was
so
just
much
yeah,
of this
exactly.
movie.
And that's where
And I think a lot
you
of
can
that's
tell.
attributed to the lack of a soundtrack or a score.
Yeah,
It's mostly just
it's
like I was
diegetic
saying,
sound.
yeah.
It's like a radio playing in the background or a TV, the noise of the TV as the kids are watching. It's just it was. Or like voices over loudspeakers when the riot's happening, and it just feels real.
The
It feels
child,
real.
we're talking about the kids again. The relationship felt real. Like the older one doesn't want the younger one to come with them when they're going to the cinema. When they're playing Skill
You're
Electrics,
too
go
young,
away.
you know, you're not this, you're not that, and then the mother's like, no, you're taking all of them, and just get the kids out of the house.
So I want to say this movie is. I want to say it's incredibly impressive. The fact that we can sit down here and we can just endlessly talk about it.
We can.
We need to stop, though.
We need to
to
wrap
We need
this
to
up.
stop, yeah. It's okay. It's just so interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I really recommend if you like film on any level.
It's my favorite movie of last year already.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a strange thing to say, but yeah.
It's my most interesting experience, cinematic experience. Like you said, I like that wording a lot. It was the most cinematic movie.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. It was the most interesting.
And I think the argument that you brought up about art versus entertainment is important. And I feel like this movie does walk on the edge. And when the problem with this movie, the only problems I can see with this movie is when it does cross that line a bit too much. Like the only scene I didn't like too much was the scene you're talking about with the singing, because I felt like that took away from the actual storyline.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking too much again. It's too easy.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's right. And, this is more than any other film that we've talked about or reviewed. I'd love to hear other people's comments and thoughts about it. I really want to know.
And this is an easy one for our viewers to actually go and watch. It's on Netflix.
Yeah. Once again, future Jordan editing this video, leave your comments down below.
Yep.
Yes, I will. Multiple versions of myself leaving comments as we speak. But yeah, I really love this movie. I feel like it felt like a palate cleanser when it comes to movies.
That's what I was trying to say with all those metaphors earlier.
Yeah. And I learned, as someone who wants to make movies, I learned an incredible amount of stuff from just watching it. So if you're out there and you love movies and you maybe want to make movies later on in your life or make movies now, I highly recommend giving this a watch because it utilizes a lot of some great filmmaking techniques.
It's easily available on Netflix, and
I'm sure you could buy it on Blu-ray as well.
And because it's such an honest movie, it's such a simple in terms of character stuff movie. There's a lot you can put on it from yourself as well. So I feel like it's a very personal movie in that respect. So I'd love to hear people's opinions.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So leave comments down below or go to our Facebook page, Instagram, whatever, pick your poison.
Grindr, Twitter, Spotify.
All of those and more. And if you I don't know where I'm going with this. Somebody help me out.
Thanks for watching.
We love you guys. We are WeMovies. I'm Scotty. That was Jordan. This is Caleb. We just talked about Roma. We could do this for another hour, but we'll say goodbye.
And the important thing to remember is WeMovies better.